Hello and welcome to Basic Folk, where we have honest conversations with folk musicians. It is I, your host, Cindy Howes. Thank you so much for joining us today. Kind of going outside the box today with Alex Cuba, who isn't exactly a folk musician, but isn't exactly not a folk musician. Alex Cuba grew up 50 minutes west of Havana, immersed in the music of his town, Artemisa. His father, the musician Valentin Puentes, is a household name in the country and prioritized Cuban music in the house growing up. When Alex was 6 years old, Valentin told his son not to sing, leading Alex to concentrate on his bass guitar playing. As a teenager, Alex rebelled and started soaking in the sounds of American music, blues, jazz, rock, and funk. This has led him to develop a unique style of Latin music that crosses cultures and appeals to people who don't even speak his language. He sings in English, but is most comfortable singing in Spanish. We talk about how even though a lot of his fans are English speakers, they often have an emotional reaction to his music, even though they don't know what he's saying. He expands on how emotions transfer via music, no matter what language. In 1995, Alex was allowed to tour in Canada with his dad's band and met someone who would forever change his life. That would be his future wife, Sarah Goodacre. They eventually ended up married with children and living in Cuba. After a while, they moved closer to her family in Smithers, British Columbia, where they have single-handedly created a Latin music industry in the small Canadian mountain town. Despite not being able to work with major record labels due to the Cuban Embargo with America, Alex has thrived as an independent artist with 4 Latin Grammys, 3 American Grammy nominations, 2 Junos, and numerous other accolades. We talk about what changes he experienced in himself while recording his latest album, Mendó, during the pandemic. Alex, like many musicians, was forced to change plans and ended up working on the album at his house while collaborating with other guest musicians remotely. We also talk about how he wanted the cover to reflect his African heritage. Brianna McCarthy, an artist from Trinidad and Tobago, illustrated the cover, and Alex talks in depth about its meaning and importance. Really enjoyed this conversation and love the new album. It is definitely a great record to put on when you are just wanting to chill and enjoy and maybe even like dance a little bit. Okay, we're going to take a listen to a song where you can do a little dancing. This is Hablando por Hablar, and then we'll get to our conversation with Alex Cuba on Basic Folk.
Haz tú lo que te guste, aquí quien puede criticar. A mí no me pregunten qué es el bien y qué es el mal. No. Ya todos los conceptos se van comprometiendo. Yo sé que nadie ha visto algo igual. Oh, la voz de una experiencia que no tiene vigencia, hablando por hablar.
Alex Cuba, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It's so nice to talk to you.
Likewise, I feel happy to be here talking to you today.
You were born and grew up about 50 minutes west of Havana in Artemisa, which is known for its musical community, and it sounds amazing there. Can you set the scene for what role the town played in your childhood, and also like what is unique about the music there?
Well, when I think about where I come from the town where I grew up, Artemisa, like you said, it's about an hour away from Havana, going into the west. I have nothing but a sense of being very lucky, to have been there at that time of my life, growing up. And I say that because look at life, it turned me into a musician, and I have made a career out of music. And so my beginning was very lucky because music was everywhere in my little town, in the town of Artemisa. Music was so real, music was so important to most people over there. Music was part of every day, and
so everybody was playing music.
Yeah, and I feel that that is the healthiest environment for a musician you can ever find. That also, that there is also one more step to it. I grew up across a place in my town called the House of Culture. Every little town in Cuba has a place like this. And what it is a government project to teach for free, kids to play every instrument they want, any instrument they want to, but also to teach every other form of art. It's not to take them to any high level or anything. It's basically to get them initiated into arts,
Is it free for kids to go?
Yes, absolutely free. And my father was one of the guitar teachers at that center. That center was right across the street from my house. So I will go to school.
Wow.
The school was 2 blocks away. I will come back home around midday or something like that. We'll, have lunch, change my uniform, and go across the street and spend, the rest of the day there until my mom will yell at me, dinner's ready, where are you? Playing any instrument I could find, doing, painting, doing theater, doing dancing. Is I feel that it was a very lucky place, for me to grow up with art, and up to today people ask me, when did you make the decision? Do you remember when did you make the decision to become a musician, professionally? And my answer is the same. I don't remember if I ever made that decision, because music is so inside of me from early in my life that that decision didn't need to be made, I guess.
There's this ongoing theme in your progression as a musician when it comes to diving into different types of music and being open to different kinds of influences. And that's great to hear about, the origin of the Michael Jackson video and how that kind of opened up your mind to American music and other kinds of music like jazz and rock and funk. Do you know where your adventurous spirit, when it came to venturing outside of the Cuban box, so to speak, where did that come from? Well,
the Michael Jackson thing happened when I was around 11. Then when I was 14, I saw somebody playing electric bass. Some band came to my town from Havana to play a show, and I went and I saw an electric bass, there, and I'm like,
was that the first time you'd seen one?
I think so, yeah. And I went, what is that? And he's like, oh, that's an electric bass. I said, oh my God, I think I love that. And he asked me,
why did you love it so much?
I don't know. Maybe because I thought it had a powerful sound, and I was always skinny and not too tall. So I thought that maybe if I play that instrument, I'll get to be powerful. I don't know what it is, but it was. But it totally looked cool to me. I was really captivated and almost hypnotized by the sound of it, And my dad said, "Yeah, do you like that? Do you want me to try to find you one?" And I say, "Please, yeah, of course. I'd love to get one." And then in 2-3 weeks, he managed to find me one. And I began to play it. First, I was, listening to records, to whatever I could find, trying to mimic whatever I was hearing in there. And then I found a bass teacher in my town that walked me through a lot of music. And it was so funny because the first lesson that he gave me when I showed up at his place, he said, play a little bit for me there. I started playing, I started slapping the bass, because at that point I was already in love with slapping, you know. And he said, "Ooh, you like funk and you like American music." I can see that.
You didn't know what you were playing, right?
No. And he said, "Okay, here you go." He went to his, the bedroom and found about 10 cassette tapes and came back and said, "Here you go. Come back next month." That was the first lesson. When I went back...
What were the tapes?
Oh, my God. Everything from Marcus Miller to Jaco Pastorius to Ron Carter to John Patitucci to you name it, all of the American bass players. And even actually a Canadian, Alain Caron from the band Uzeb. When I went back to see him the following month, I knew a lot of the solos already by memory. That's how much I listened to all of the tapes. And then he knew exactly what my tastes or what was that I was looking forward to learn more in music, And that's why he gave me that type of lesson, because he wanted to somehow wake up my sensibilities and then get going from there. And then from that point, we studied, of course, theory, music reading, writing, all of that. And yeah, up to today, he left a huge impression in me, because I think he made it clear. He made a lot of things clear, for me. Yeah. And that is something
what
amazing.
A good ear, too.
Yeah.
For him to recognize that in you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, I find when I'm playing Cuban music, I feel the same that I feel when I'm playing American music and I'm grooving. The concept of grooving is something a little different than when you play Cuban music. We don't think of it as grooving, like being in, like deep pocket, and laying it down. In Cuba, because Cuban music is very old, a lot of it comes from the rumba sort of thing. And rumba is very constantly improvising kind of thing, So it is two different things that I think somehow at the end they become the same, but the way you think about it is completely different. And I remember when I started finding that common thread between American and Cuban music and all of that. It was a lot of fun,
Your dad told you when you were younger, he told you not to sing.
Yeah. He wasn't being a bad person. I'm going to explain why.
Yeah, explain why. And you said it took me a lot of courage to move far away from my culture in order to find my voice. And what did finding your voice look like in practice?
Well, at the point I began writing songs and I started to try to sing them. Being very shy, being very to myself. I was already recognized by many in my town as a good bass player. I was around 15, 16, right? And I started writing because at the same time, I don't know, poetry started captivating me. I started writing songs. This melody started coming to me, and then I started writing. And I would call my dad and I said, "Dad, what do you think of can I just play something for you?" Sure. And I would play a song and he would say, "Oh, nice. I love the image you're giving here with this metaphor or whatever. Maybe try to change this other word so that this one sounds, give me whatever advice you could." And then at the end he would say, "But don't sing. Don't sing, because I don't think you have a voice of a singer." At that point, it was my brother, the one that was showing all kinds of intention, and talent, I guess, to be a singer, because he had everything recognizable in Cuban culture in his voice. The Cuban sounding voice is like a trumpet. You know what I'm saying? Very bright.
Yeah.
You
have to sing over everybody.
Exactly, commanding a 16-piece band. You gotta have that kind of voice, which is fine. If you have it, that's amazing. But I didn't have that kind of voice. I had a different voice. I had what North America taught me, and getting outside of my culture taught me as soulful, which is the term that, believe it or not, doesn't exist in Cuban music. People don't think that way. Because if you're bright and loud like that, it's difficult to be soulful that way. Is that your voice kind of evokes a different feeling? You evokes the feeling of
like contemplative.
Exactly.
Thoughtful.
Yeah. And so my dad was completely, because he never heard a voice like mine, I guess, in Cuban music. And he was completely sure that my voice wasn't to be, the voice of a singer if I wanted to pursue, a career in music. And also it's coming from, you gotta understand, how, maybe Cuba, of course, is, it's been you find many bands that play, for example, without amplification, that et cetera, right? And of course, that scene like that, you gotta have a big voice, otherwise nobody hears you. You know what I'm saying? But
just like a general question about like somebody who sings like that in a Cuban band, like, are they able to maintain their voice for a long time, or does it just blow out vocal cords?
Not at all. I think, I don't think they last that long. I think it's possible. I don't think it's possible. It's like you get to the point where you lose your voice for sure. And so just to make a long story short, when I moved to Canada and we managed to record a first album here that I did with my brother, on that album I'm singing, I think, 2 songs as a lead singer. And when the album finally made it to Cuba, to my parents' house, my mom tells me, because my dad wouldn't tell me, right? Of course, he's not going to let me see that part of him. Just kidding. Right. That when one of the songs started playing, he was like captivated. And then when I started singing, he was like in trance. And then, I don't know, a few more seconds into it, my dad was in tears. He was crying. And then he couldn't listen to that song for about 3 weeks. Every time my mom will play the album, he will, walk up to the CD player and skip that song, right? And then I had the ability, the opportunity to ask him, Dad, why can't you listen to this song? What happened? What did you cry? Things like that, right? And he said, he kept saying, well, it's a beautiful song. And I'm like, okay, thanks. What else can you say about it? Oh, it's a beautiful song, okay. What else can you say about it? Well, you sing it with a lot of feelings. And that was a very interesting and important moment, I think, in my career, because what it meant feeling, in my opinion, was confidence.
Yeah.
And that confidence.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
That confidence.
What a dad.
That confidence was given to me by this country, by going outside of my culture and finding my space. Yeah. Cuba would hammer me, like, oh, you don't have a voice to sing, because I don't sound like anything that they heard before. So I'm like, God, has his own plans, and he works in mysterious ways, as religion says, I guess.
It's interesting to think about you coming from a small town, and now you have ended up in a small town in Smithers, British Columbia, which they couldn't be more different, except in the fact that they are small towns. So how did that beginning of like thriving musically in a small town and living in small town life set you up for success in the future?
Well, when I came here to this small town where I live now, Smithers, I had already been in Canada for 4 years. I went to the city of Victoria first, and then from there we will come every Christmas, and like every summer if I had the time to visit some family here. And that kind of, I don't know, made me see a lot of the interior life and the way people live in small towns in Canada, right? Of course I loved a lot of it. I find a lot of similarities to the town where I come from, because in small towns everybody knows each other, you know. People walk on the street, they know you or you know them, and that kind of vibe. The decision to come here was based on family. We had our second child, Sarah and I, and I was traveling a lot, and it was kind of necessary to find the support of family. It was either going to be Cuba, go back to Cuba, or, you know, Smithers. I think those were our two options, kind of thing. I opted to come here, and because of you know, being able to travel easily and freely and all of that, right? I was still a Cuban citizen when I moved here. A year later, I became a Canadian citizen. But anyway, this little town has an airport. The airport is like 4 minutes away from my house. It's very easy to travel from here, or I was, at least before COVID. But yeah, I got here. No, I'm not going to tell you that I had a master plan. I mean, 9 months or something, you know, after we moved here, I got to that moment where I was like, okay, how am I going to do music here from here now? What am I done, you know, and how are things going to happen from here? And
but it's kind of like you kind of already had that foundation inside of you from your hometown. Yeah. I always felt very, in music, I have felt all of my life very capable and very prepared, you know. I guess it's the creative mind too, you know. And but in order to express myself musically, I didn't think that musicians in town were, you know, going to be able to play my music, my kind of music, all of that, right? And it slowly started to happen. I have to say that I've been very lucky in you know, having the right support beside me. You know, Sarah is always encouraging me the right way, and she's like, okay, you know what? If you believe in yourself, you can make it happen from anywhere, and that's all I needed to hear, right? So I started playing with kids here, like younger people than me, and teaching them my music, and then finding new lights, new ways, you know, in whatever they were giving me back, you know, their interpretation of what I was teaching them. It started to make my mind very open, you know, and that has a lot to do with my sound today, because it made me change from a Cuban strictly that thinks strictly in a Cuban way to a Cuban that thinks more universally. You know, basically, see the core of your culture, see the core of your music, use its essence, but be free in creating. You know what I mean? Because you create for the world. And Canada also not having a Latin market in front of me, you know, it rather been a scary thing, at least in terms of creativity, has been for me a very inspirational thing, because I say, okay, I don't have a Latin market here, but I have the world, I guess. And my aims are creating something universal, something that goes beyond even my culture, you know? And that definitely has created a sound for me. Yeah. You said Canada made me explode with creativity, and you talked about like the sense of the space the country has, particularly in Smithers. Like it just like huge mountains in the background and small town life, and it just looks really beautiful there.
I cannot even explain what it does to me, you know, in terms of creativity. But one thing that I can tell you is that I've done it over and over and over and over and over. You know, 8 albums now, and creativity always comes. It keeps coming back to me. I feel that I'm connected, you know, to the earth, you know, from this place. Every time I go into a creative moment, you know, that sometimes it's like a wave and sometimes it's like really aggressive for me. I've been in moments where I'm writing like 4 songs at the same time. They're completely different, one to the other.
Wow.
I don't know what it is.
I think it's that adventurous spirit, Alex.
Thank you.
I was listening to your record a million times, and the first track, Hablando, is it Hablando y Hablar?
Yeah, Hablando por Hablar.
I like on the fifth listen, I was like, wait a minute, this is just the human voice clapping, snapping, and the upright bass. But it's like, like the first time you put it on, you're like, what a great club hit this is. Like, this is such a banger. But it's so simple. Like,
Thank you.
And that is a great example of how you keep your music simple yet complex. So I'm wondering, like, how do you connect with both of those different aspects, like simplicity and complexity, if you prefer one over the other, and how you maintain the balance between the two in music, especially keeping like your like Anglo audience in mind?
Well, I got to tell you, I discovered early in my career kind of what was my real taste in music. I discovered very early that no matter what, even if I try to escape out of it, I'm a classic. I like some, things that feel that they've been on earth forever, and I like that kind of vibe in the music. I also discovered very early that the music that I was creating was loved by both the musician and the non-musician. Even though I was very lucky to work with a producer on my first album that left a big impression in me. In one of the tracks, I was like, can we do that again? I want to lay some more notes on the bass. And after I did it like 3 times and I kept missing, he came to me and said, hey, buddy, I'm going to tell you one thing. You have a beautiful voice, which is why we are making this record, and I believe in you and all of that. Don't try to get, in front of your voice. Don't try to complicate what you're doing, because I think the element that is going to make you connect with the people is your voice. And from that point forward, they are not going to care who the bass players is. So I'm sorry to say it that way.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what he said to me. And I'm like, wow, okay.
Great advice.
Absolutely, absolutely. But then I discovered that music comes this way out of me. And because I do it so naturally, it has a certain flow that to the ear, to the people that are listening, it sounds easy. But when you try to play it, it's a different thing. I have many stories about that. I have, for example, I made it to cities like LA, and I, hiring musicians, and I talk to bass player or whatever, and especially bass players, because that's still my main instrument. Although I play guitar and all of that, and my main instrument is still the bass. And I get things like, I'm just telling all of this to give you an idea of what this means for me, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna play this song and that song and that song. Yeah, okay, and the musician always goes, oh, that's fine. Okay, cool. No, I got this. This is not too difficult. An hour later, they call to say, what have you played here? What did you play here? I can't, things like that. John Coltrane said that the definition of talent is the ability to make something difficult sound simple. And to add a little bit more to that, you can't manifest it if it's not in you. If you think about it, if you try to make it consciously, do it consciously, it will always feel forced. That's something that has to come out of you when you are not thinking. That's something that has to happen on its own. Some people have it, some people don't, And I don't know. I don't know if I have it or not, but people keep telling me that. It's like, how you make this complex thing sound so simple? And my answer is, I don't know. That's the way it came to me. I'm only receiving here. I was making coffee one morning, and that bass line lands in my head, and I ran to my bass, And I started playing, and I'm like, oh my God, I love this. Is a great hook. I love this. Wait a minute. And one thing that I really practice on the recording of this album, and I'm in love with it. I think that's gonna be my thing from now on. My studio is right in my living room. I have it set up here. So I'm on the bass, I loved it. And I said, wait a minute, jump to my computer, set up everything, and recorded it. What I'm saying is that on this album, I try to really cut down to as little as possible the time between an idea landing in my mind and me recording it. Because to me, it's a huge amount of information happening at that moment. It's the truth. It's the really most true or truthful version of that musical idea. If you wait until tomorrow, you're going to be recording a version of what already existed in your mind once. So I really enjoyed that from this album. I did a lot of that on this album. And that song that you just made as an example is a good example of it. And also, when I recorded, that same day, later, like a couple hours later or something, I ended up doing the whole demo with no lyrics yet. I had a complete melody. And then I played it for my engineer on the phone, over the phone. And he said, I challenge you not to put any more instruments on that song. I said, buddy, this sounds complete to me. That's it. I'm not going to go anywhere else. And that's what I did. Of course, we ended up having two versions of it. The one that closes the album has, it's like bookends. It has a big 13 horns orchestra.
That's the big beat.
Yeah. And it happened because I was working out the songs that I wanted horns on, which that one wasn't, of course. But I made the mistake to show it to the arranger in Cuba. And he's like, hold on a minute, buddy. I'm going to put horns on this one, whether you want to or not. This is your problem from this point forward. I love this tune, and he's screaming out loud to me, horns, horns. And he came out with a killer arrangement. When he sent it back, I was confronted with having to make the decision if I had the song twice on the album or if I compressed the two versions and make one. But I just kept loving the simple one because of the simplicity of it. And I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I created two different versions and have them that way on the album.
I like it. I like that it opens with the simple
Thank you.
version because it's,
And to answer your question, the reason why I did it that way is because what I have learned in Canada, my effort to communicate my music to the Anglo ear has taught me a lot of that simplicity. Has taught me to be essence more than anything else. And that simple version that opens the album is the essence of the song. You can't get any more essential than that. I guess, just the bass and claps and vocals. So that sort of gift, I think, in a lot of ways that I have of seeing two different cultures, and understand both of them is what makes me create that way, I think.
It's interesting to think the album title, Mendó, in Cuban, you just mentioned the word essence. That's what it means. It means essence or soul. And you said that's where this album comes from.
Exactly.
I want to hear more about the significance of a Cuban musician creating music from the soul while he is at home in the Canadian mountains.
There is so many things wrong with that if you think about it.
Or not, or it's so many things right.
The only thing that I can say though is that my music doesn't speak of any regrets or any feelings of loneliness or missing anything or a country or your country that you left behind. I think my music speaks of the new world that I found. And for some reason, it took me a while to understand how is it that I write music, what triggers music for me, etc., etc. I tell you one little secret. If I'm upset, depressed, or something, or stressed out or whatever, at that very moment, I don't like music. In fact, I hate music at that very moment. But as soon as I'm happy about something, or for something, or for whatever, songs come rushing down to me, for me. And it took me a while to understand that, and I even went through a moment of being kind of embarrassed about it, because I was thinking, are people thinking that I take a whole bunch of drugs to make music, and what you hear is just Alex high, super high, and of course life is so beautiful when you're high. I don't know what the, I'm like, eee. But then I realized that no, true will always be. We'll always find a way to get into people, people's heart and all that. And I embraced it. And that's how I create music. That's how it comes to me. That's who I am.
Alex, when you realized that, I watched that documentary, I think that CBC did on you, where you said,
right,
it was quite a trip to realize that I'm a messenger of happiness, which is so nice. When you realized that, how did it change your approach to writing, and how did it change your relationship with like being like nicer to yourself or more gentle with yourself when you weren't feeling good?
Well, I think it made me embrace it more, embrace myself, my type of creativity, and he started opening doors for me to really go full on creatively, and no hold back on anything that has to do with the creative process, because if as you are discovering yourself as a musician, you go through those times where, somehow where you feel after your record came out, or whatever, you feel that you maybe held back a little on something, I think it happens to a lot of us, on the journey of getting to know ourselves creatively. But no, what it did is allow me to embrace it. And I think that shows in what you hear, most recently, actually, I have to say, because there is no holding back, there is no second guessing who I am, or what kind of song this is. Nothing, it's like.
In thinking about the way you feel about Cuba, I did read that you weren't able to get a major label record deal because of the embargo with America that Bush declared with Cuba, and you started your own label and you've done well. And I hear that Cuba for a while was like seemingly ignoring your music, where your dad is a household name, your brother's getting some recognition. So given all that, like, how do you maintain a good relationship and a love for your home country? Is it difficult to do that?
Well, that's a wonderful question, actually. A good path to a human being, I guess, making peace with everything that you have accomplished, everything that you have around you at the moment. I think the taking responsibility for your own life, taking responsibility for everything, that's how you get to make peace, I think. And I take responsibility for everything I've done. I feel that my country, where I come from, doesn't owe me anything, and I don't owe my country anything. So looking at it from that point of view, it set me free, and therefore I went all the way to have an interesting feeling. I feel that it's okay, I feel that I don't. It won't feel right for me to go to Cuba, back to Cuba, for example, or go to Cuba to create some sort of media tour or whatever, and give myself 6 months to become famous in Cuba. I don't feel that that's right, because I don't live there. And I feel that if I was to do that, let's say I'm all powerful, I land in Cuba with a lot of money in my pocket, I start paying people left and right to put me on TV 24/7 or something. I don't feel that that would be right, because I would be taking somebody else's space, somebody else's that didn't leave the country, somebody that is there, and it has a purpose in time and space. Why should I come, from Canada and say, I want to, I think it won't feel right to me. So I have left it to the time. I have left it to the universe. I have left it to God. If I am to be recognized in the country where I come from, I think it will happen. And it would be most beautiful to know. It would be so beautiful to know that I didn't force it, that it happened on its own. That's what I think.
It is amazing to think of how emotions can translate through music than more than just languages, because like a lot of your fans are English speakers and they have some serious emotional reactions and emotional connections to your songs sung in Spanish, even though they don't know what you're saying.
Absolutely. Something so mysterious, up to this day, it remains something very mysterious to me. The closer I can get to an explanation is that melodies, they contain a huge amount of information. It's amazing how much information a melody has. A melody can trigger emotions big time, right? That's why we have instrumental music, etc., etc. And so one of the explanations that I could have about that is that obviously I put a lot of care into my melodies. A lot of energy goes. At this point of my career, I know when I'm getting a new melody for a song, I know within seconds if it's something that is going to be an Alex Cuba signature, of course, which is most of the time a unique sort of melody, or if it's something that I have to, or if it's something that I have to let go because it's just some some transmission from a universe from where I don't usually get my transmissions from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the melodies, they, and people feel it. It's unbelievable. I'm still, to wrap my head around that. Wrapping my head around that.
It's cosmic, man.
Absolutely.
On your recent albums, including on your new album, Mendó, you have collaborated with musicians from all over the place, not just Canada and the U.S., but Canada and the U.S., as well as musicians from Cuba, Peru, Spain, Mexico, to name a few. What kind of differences do you see in yourself when you're working with musicians from Canada and the U.S. versus Spanish-speaking Latin American countries, if there's like different energies or approaches there?
Sometimes I find a little different, small different ways of saying the same thing with different words, because our Spanish language is very rich throughout the whole continent. And sometimes, a collaborator will tell me, I'm not comfortable saying this word, for example, that a Cuban person will be completely comfortable saying, things like that. Mm-hmm. But I am happy to say that the common denominator in everything I've done in terms of collaborations with singers from Latin America is that they all recognize beauty, the beauty and the elegance with which I approach or try to approach my music every time, and no matter what country, which also happens too in English, I at the beginning of my career in Canada, I was like, there was a moment when my brother told me, we got to get the hell out of here because these people are never going to get what we do. And I said, no, I think you're wrong there. Excuse me, I think I have a different way about this. I believe in beauty. Beauty is something universal. If we focus on doing something extraordinarily beautiful, people are going to get it. And that has been my life. Yeah.
You wanted the album cover to reflect your African heritage, and Brianna McCarthy, who's an artist from Trinidad and Tobago, illustrated the cover to reflect that. What do you know, and how do you connect to your African heritage? Like how does the album cover make you feel when you look at it?
Oh, what a great question. One thing about me is that I am very percussive in almost everything I do. I had to learn in Canada to roll that back a bit when I wanted to and use it when I want to.
We should also mention, were your first instrument that was the claves?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? The sticks when you were 4? Yeah,
playing for the national TV show when I was 4. And so I think very rhythmically, pretty much all Alex Cuba music is groovy, and so dynamically, I have learned, producer tricks and stuff like that to use that and to not use it, kind of to play with that, right? I know the Africa in me through the percussion. I know that Africa is in me through the rhythmical of the rhythmic feelings that I have about music. I know it's in there, and I feel it very deeply. It's like a groove or something. It has a special place in my heart. For me, it's very important that music has groove. That music has that deep sense of pocket, and that's how I think I connect to Africa. It was a beautiful coincidence how we ended up reaching out to Brianna McCarthy. My wife bought a book that was being promoted by CBC Radio. CBC Radio does something called Canada Reads, and then the people vote, and then they choose a winner, no? And this book was being number 2 at the moment. But she buys, we are walking down here, Main Street here in Smithers, and she goes into the bookstore, and there was the book on display, and she said, I'm going to buy this. Boom, she bought it. I looked at it, and I saw on the cover an interesting painting. It almost didn't look like a painting because it's been processed in a way, and the colors that were used, they looked almost not like a painting. It was more like a photo or something like that. But it was a painting of 2 twins, female sisters, and it caught my eye, the elegance of it. How elegantly, this person that did it was portraying the African diaspora, and I'm like, wow, wait a minute, like that. So we reached out to her because of that, because I thought she has a very elegant way of painting, honoring the African diaspora around the world, and I couldn't be any more happy with what she did. For my album, when I look at it, I see something very spiritual. When I look at the cover of my album, I see something very, very deep and spiritual, and that's exactly what I wanted it to be.
Before I let you go, Alex, I want to do a quick round of questions for you.
Okay.
It is called the lightning round. Will you participate?
Okay.
All right, here we go. What was the first song you learned on the guitar?
It was El Condor Pasa.
What's your karaoke song?
What's my karaoke song? I don't have one. Sorry. Never been to karaoke, never done karaoke before.
That's actually like pretty common.
Okay, cool.
But it's still funny. Do you like dogs or cats or something else?
I'm not a pet person at all. I don't understand love for pet. Weird.
Really?
Totally. Yeah, I don't understand it.
You don't have any pets?
I had, but because of my kids and stuff. But right now we don't have any pet. Sometimes it pierces my heart to know that some humans will treat a pet better than another human being. That's why I don't understand it.
I respect that. How do you take your coffee?
No sugar, a little cream.
Same.
Very strong.
Who is the nicest musician you've ever met?
The nicest musician I ever met. He's a bass player from New York City. His name is Robert Jost. He played with me once in a while.
Nice.
Amazing guy.
What was the first album you bought with your own money?
Oh, the beautiful question. It was a self-titled Jaco Pastorio's album.
All right, here's the last one. Where is the most beautiful place you've ever visited?
Wow. Most beautiful place I ever visited. When I was flown on a helicopter up the mountain here in Smithers and dropped off on the other side of the mountain. Left there for 5 hours with my family, with food and everything we needed. Yeah.
And where was that?
The other side of the biggest mountain around here in Smithers.
Oh.
It's called Hudson Bay Mountain.
Wow. It's you can see the mountain, but you just went to the other side. Is the other side quite wild?
It's quite amazing. You can see the whole valley from up there. It's unbelievable. We had an amazing... You can see a whole bunch of mountain goats and everything.
That's great.
Instead of camping, it's glamping, I think they call it. I don't remember. But yeah, it was a gift.
Glamping.
It was a gift from Tourism and Smithers when I got my third Grammy nomination. They wanted to do something for me, and that's what they did. It was fun.
That's great. What a great gift.
Yeah, and I had to, I enjoyed it with my whole family. They took us up there in a helicopter, and we had a cooler full of food and drinks, and there you go. Bye. See you in 5 hours. 5 hours. The chopper came back for us. Beautiful.
Amazing. Well, Alex, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was so wonderful to learn about you and to talk to you. And
my pleasure.
I love your record and wish you so much success.
Thank you. This has been a beautiful conversation. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Basic Folk this week was produced by Laura McCarthy. Alex Stanton of Townspeople composes our music. Basic Folk is on the American Songwriter Podcast Network. I'm your host, Cindy Howes. Thank you so much for checking out the pod today. And please go back and listen to other episodes, especially episodes that feature our brand new guest host, Lizzie No. You can find Basic Folk wherever you get podcasts or at basicfolk.com. All right, we'll talk to you next time. Bye.